Hello and welcome to the subject of functional grammar, lesson 5 for the students of College of Education, Department of English. As I have already told and explained that for the study of functional grammar, we depend upon Halliday's masterpiece, the book Introduction to Functional Grammar, and this is our reference book for a study of this subject. Before we start the lesson, let's have a look back at what we have discussed in lesson 1, that is to say, a review of lesson 1. These are the topics we talked about. The first is grammar, branches of grammar, formal or traditional grammar, functional grammar, formal or traditional grammar, descriptive grammar, prescriptive grammar, descriptive grammar, word level grammar, sentence level grammar, prescriptive grammar, difference between descriptive and prescriptive grammar, functional grammar. These are the topics we talked about in our lesson first. We move on to the next. A review of lesson 2. If you recall to your mind, we talked about these topics in our lesson 2. The first is what is functional grammar, second text, what is text, text as an object, text as an instrument, text as artifact or a specimen, text as register, grammatics, semiosis. These are the topics we talked in detail in our lesson 2. This is the review of lesson 3, analysis of a text at the level of phonology, that is to say, constituency, phonological or phonological constituency. We talked about these topics. What is constituency, phonology, line, food, syllable, rhyme, onset, rank scale. We move on to the next, that is to say, a review of lesson 4, analysis of a text at the level of graphology. That is the second level, constituency, second, graphological. What is graphology? We talked about. Then it has 4 subparts: sentence, subsentence, word, letter. These are the topics we talked about in our lesson 4. Now we move on to the lesson 5, Lexico-grammar, and this is the last lesson of this subject, Introduction to Linguistics. So let's go and talk about lexicogrammar. What is lexicogrammar? Lexicogrammar is also called lexical grammar. Lexicogrammar is also called lexical grammar. Here, the word lexico is related to meaning, is related to vocabulary, and grammar, we know, the law of language. So lexicogrammar is all about the connection between lexical items and grammar. Next, it is a term used in systematic functional linguistics, SFL, to emphasize the interdependence of vocabulary, lexis, and syntax, grammar. Look here, lexicogrammar is a term, and this term is frequently used in systematic functional linguistics, SFL. And lexicogrammar emphasizes, puts emphasis, puts focus upon how vocabulary and syntax, how lexis and grammar both depend upon each other. Syntax depends upon the meaning, vocabulary, and the vocabulary depends upon the syntax. We cannot separate. They are interdependent. That is why interdependence of vocabulary, lexis, and syntax. The term was introduced by renowned linguist M.A. Halliday, and this term, lexicogrammar, was introduced by this man M.A. Halliday, And this is the person Halliday, whose book we take as a reference for the study of this subject. Next, it is an amalgamation of the words lexicon and grammar. Look, what is a lexicogrammar? In other words, it is an amalgamation. Amalgamation means it is a combination. It is an agreement of the words between lexicon and grammar. That is to say, vocabulary and the grammar. That is to say, lexis and syntax. The adjective form of this word is lexicogrammatical. So lexicogrammar is the noun form and lexicogrammatical is the adjective form of the word lexicogrammar. So we have these 5 points about lexicogrammar. All the points are very important because they are already in brief. We move on to the next. Analysis of a text at the level of lexicogrammar. Previous section in the slide we talked about what is a lexicogrammar as a part of our introduction to understand this lesson. Now we are going to talk about how a text can be analyzed at the level of lexicogrammar. That is constituency 3, lexicogrammatical. Look, the first constituency was phonology, the second constituency was graphology, and this is the third constituency, lexicogrammatical. So in this lesson we will be talking about 5 principles of lexicogrammar. So there are 5 principles of lexicogrammar. The first is a scale of rank, second, units of rank, third, clause complexes, fourth, rank shift, fifth, enclosed. So we have the 5 important principles of lexicogrammar and we will discuss one by one in detail. But before we discuss, let's have an example first to understand what those 5 principles might mean to us. Okay? If you recall your lesson 4 in which we had a table and we had an example and we divided the sentence, sub-sentence, word and later different levels, different constituency. That example is taken again. We will visit a little Miss Muffet just one more time. Means we will take the same example of Miss Muffet one more time to understand this lesson in a much better way. The punctuation of the text in the previous lesson 4 clearly indicated its graphological composition in terms of sentences, sub-sentences and words. If you remember and go back to the lesson number 4, we talked about graphology, graphological composition, and we came to know how the sentences, we have the sentences, and within sentences we have the sub-sentences, within sub-sentences we have words, and how punctuations are used, how words are used, and so on. When we now break down the same text into its grammatical constituents figure given, we find a higher degree of correspondence across the higher units. Each written sentence is one clause complex and each sub-sentence is one clause. This is obviously not a coincidence. The 2 sets of units are related. Look here. If you break any text into its grammatical constituents, what we find? We find a higher degree of correspondence, higher degree of connection, higher degree of connectivity, higher degree of agreement between one constituent into another. Each written sentence is one clause complex. Look, each written sentence has one big clause complex, and within clause complex we have each sub-sentence is one clause. And this is not a coincidence. The 2 sets, clause and clause complex, they are very much related. Look, this will be clear when we move on a little forward to take up the example first. Okay? Anyway, this is just an introduction and this is just for the sake of information. This is not to memorize. This is just to start our discussion. This is just to let you know how graphological composition is divided in terms of sentences, sub-sentences, and words, and how we have one big clause complex. Within clause complex we have clause, and both are interlinked and interconnected. So this is just for the sake of information. So don't memorize this, please. Okay, we move on to the next. Look here, example of grammatical constituency. As we talked about clause complex, like look here, little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her cousin whey. There came a big spider, who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. Look here, we have this clause complex. This is a complex clause, and within complex clause, what we find? We have the clause. This is one clause, and this is another clause. And within clause, what we find? We find word group. We also call it phrase. Word group. Look, word group, word group. Likewise, we have this example. We have three clauses. Look, clause complex. This is the clause complex. And within clause complex, we have this clause. One clause, two clause, three clause. And within clause, what we have? Word group, word group, word group, word group. Means phrase. So this is just an example to let you understand how a big chunk of sentence, how a text can have clause complex. Within clause complex, we will have clauses. Within clauses, we will have word groups, phrases, and words, and so on, like this. So this is just to understand, just to have the information how different constituency depends upon each other. This is just for the sake of information, sake of knowledge, just to let our discussion start. No need to memorize this. Okay, move on to the next. This is very, very important. The 5 principles of constituency in lexicogrammar. And all these 5 constituency of lexicogrammar, very, very important. So please memorize these 5 principles. Very, very important. Okay. So what is our first principle? The first is a scale of ranks. What is a scale of ranks? Let us discuss. Look, go back to the example we talked about. Go back to the table we talked about and see how we have the clause complex, how we have clause, how we have word group, and so on. If you understand that table very much, you will understand this rank of a scale of ranks very much. Come here. There is a scale of rank in the grammar of every language. That of English can be represented as follows. Look here. In every grammar of language, we have a scale of rank, means we have a level of rank. And the level is defined by first clause. The clause is divided into 2, particularly first clause complex. And then we have clause. And then we have clause nexus. Okay, look here. Clause complex. It refers to a number of clauses being linked together in a sentence. So what is clause complex? Clause complex refers to a number of clauses being linked together in a sentence. So in one sentence, sometimes you can have a number of clauses, and this refers to clause complex. Complex itself means more difficult to understand. So clause complex contains a number of clauses, and those numbers of clauses, they are interlinked together in a sentence. They work as one unit to give meaning. Okay. Now, what is clause nexus? Each single linkage within a clause complex can be referred to as one clause nexus. Look, as I told you, clause complex refers to a number of clauses, and a number of clauses, they are interlinked in a sentence, and each linkage of clause within a clause complex, this is known as clause nexus. Nexus here means connection, agreement. So clause nexus is the connection, the relation between one clause with another within a clause complex. This is called clause nexus. Okay, now we move on to the next. Now we have within this phrase rank of a scale with a phrase group. After we have, first is clause complex, then we have clause, then we have clause nexus, the connection between the clauses, and then we have phrase group. Grammatically, the constituents of a clause is not in fact a word. It is either a phrase or a word group, which we shall call simply group as well. Look here, phrase group. The grammatically, the constituent of a clause is not in fact a word. So constituent of a clause, within a clause, if we study, we find that it is not a word, but rather it is a phrase or a word group or a group of words. So we have first clause complex, we have clause, then there is a clause nexus, and then we have phrase or group. Okay, and after phrase or group, look here, word. Grammatically, a word functions as constituents of a phrase or a group. Look here, we divide clause complex, then within clause complex we have clause, then the connection between one clause with another we call it clause nexus, then within clause we have phrase or group, and within phrase or group we have word, and within word what we have? Morpheme. Morphemes are constituents of words. These are not marked off in the writing system. Sometimes they can be identified as the parts of a written word. For example, eat, eating, cat, cats, frighten, frightened. So just to understand, I'm just reviewing this point, rank of a scale. The first is what we call complexes. Clause complex. Within clause complex we have clauses, and the connection between one clause with another clause we have clause nexus. Within clause we have phrase or group. Within phrase group we have word, and within word we find morpheme. Okay, this we call rank of a scale. How a text can be divided into a larger segment, then going down, breaking down into the smallest one. This is called constituency. Okay, move on to the next. Point number 2, second principle of what you call this lexicogrammar. Units of rank. Each unit of rank consists of one or more units of the rank next below. Look here, each unit of rank. Look, one unit of rank is clause complex. Then we have clause. Within clause we have phrase. Within phrase we have word. Within word we have morpheme. So each unit of rank consists of one or more units of the rank next below. So one unit has another unit has another more units, and they are all interlinked, and this we call units of rank. Point number 3, clause complexes. Units of every rank may form complexes. Not only clause complexes, but also phrase complexes, group complexes, word complexes, and even morpheme complexes may be generated by the same grammatical resources. Look here, clause complexes are the bigger one, and within clause complexes we'll find every other constituency, every other rank, every other unit, that is the clause complexes. Then we have phrase complexes, then we have group complexes, that is phrase complexes, word complexes, and so on. So within clause complexes you can find every rank of other items like clause, like phrase, like word, like morpheme. Okay, so this is what we call clause complexes. Next, fourth principle of lexicogrammar, rank shift. There is the potential for rank shift, whereby a unit of one rank may be downgraded to function in the structure of a unit of its own rank or of a rank below. Most commonly, though not uniquely, a clause may be downranked to function in the structure of a group. Look at rank shift here. It means that one rank may be downranked to function in the structure of a unit of its own rank or rank below. Look here. Here, what is point is that each rank of a scale, each constituency is downgraded slowly, down ranked slowly till we reach to the last level. So the point here is that when we analyze the text, first, if you take any text and you analyze it, first we go as a large segment. Within the large segment, it further goes down to the smaller one, then further goes down to the smallest one, till we reach the last undivisible segment of the text. That is the point here. What we call rank shift means we keep on shifting the rank, we keep on shifting the constituency, the level of unit. That is the point. And the last principle of lexicogrammar is enclosed. Under certain circumstances, it is possible for one unit to be enclosed within another, not as a constituent of it, but simply in such a way as to split the other one into two discrete parts. Look here, sometimes we call enclosed. Enclosed means that just to likely to be covered, likely to be surrounded. So in certain circumstances, not normally, sometimes it is possible that one unit to be enclosed within another, means that one unit can be enclosed within another unit, means one unit, one constituency is overlapping the other constituency. Sometimes the clauses are overlapping with compressed clauses, phrases are overlapping with the clause, and the words are overlapping with the phrase, like this. Then we sometimes split. We look into deeply, we split each segment, which is the clause complex, which is the constituency, which is the word, and we separate them so that they become discrete parts, distinct parts, so that each part can be easily recognized. So what we here enclosed means that you try to identify one segment, one constituency, one level, then you go to the another, then you go to the another till you reach the last, and you enclose every unit, every scale, every rank, so that it becomes easier for you to identify the particular the division you have made, and it helps in understanding and analyzing the text linguistically. That is the point here, enclosed. We move on to the next. Now 5 principles we have completed. So all those 5 principles are very important. They are already very short and brief. Try to memorize them, try to understand. Now it is time to talk about questions. Questions type 1. What is lexicogrammar? Write your answer in detail. So what is lexicogrammar? When we first started discussion, we talked about lexicogrammar. It has 4 or 5 points. Try to memorize all those points. If I ask, write your answer in detail, write all the points. If I ask, write your answer in brief, write your answer as short as possible. Go to the point number 2. What are the 5 principles of lexicogrammar? Write the names only. Just write the names of the 5 principles. Don't explain, because I am asking, just write the names only. So the rank of a scale, and then we have a second number, third number, fourth number, and fifth number. Okay, we move on to the next. Questions type 2. Explain any 3 of the 5 principles of lexicogrammar. We have just talked about 5 principles. Okay, now in the examination you may be asked to explain any 2, any 3, any 4, maybe all of the 5. So here we have one simple question like, explain any 3 of the 5 principles of lexicogrammar. So you can choose. So I will give some choice in the examination for you, so that you have the freedom to write whatever you want to write. So you can choose any 3 of them and write the answer in detail. Okay, so this is question type 2, and I think this is the end of lesson 5, and also this is the end of our discussion about the subject of functional grammar, and this is the last lecture of this online series lectures, and hope you have understood. Thank you and goodbye.